So, just to give you an idea of what we have, it might be a little bit different of what you have in your different countries. Okay? So, I titled this first part of my presentation as The Living Laboratory, an Expedition to the Biodiversity of Mount Makiling Forest Reserve. My name is Assistant Professor Ivy Amor Labio. I am a faculty here at UP Los Baños, currently also a curator for the Museum of Natural History here in UPLB, and also currently Deputy Director of our Institute of Biological Sciences. Okay, so this mountain is actually a volcano. Okay, it is a dormant volcano that is part of a large field, okay, that is known as the San Pablo Volcanic Field, which means that a lot of the lakes and areas here are actually volcanic in origin. The big lake that we have right next to this mountain is actually the crater of the old volcano that has since become dormant. And what is left is just this area, which is the Mount Makiling, which would actually have a spew of magma, of lava, and it is felt via the mud springs. And also in the surrounding areas, you might have noticed going from Manila here, there are a lot of hot spring resorts along the way. So the energy that is being spewed out of that is actually coming from the mountain itself. Okay? We also have a geothermal facility at the other side of the mountain, which actually powers this part of the region. Okay? And tomorrow, you'll be going to one of the 7 lakes of San Pablo, which is actually volcanic in origin. Okay? So, these views here, that area here, this is where Mount Makiling is, and this area here, where you'll be going tomorrow, is also riddled with a lot of lakes that are volcanic in origin. Okay? If you look at our lake ecosystem, it is not really that high, a little over 1,000 meters above sea level, okay? But it is a stratovolcano, and it has a lot of tributaries, a lot of river systems that would flow from the top of the mountain, going to and feeding the area surrounding it. A lot of them would be depositing its water to that of the Laguna Lake, and not really part of Mount Makiling, but a little bit further up here, you would have your Bagsanghan Falls, would also be depositing its water towards that of Laguna Lake. Okay? So this area of Luzon, the Philippines, is quite important because it feeds the lake ecosystem, where a lot of our fisher folks, a lot of towns will be settling in. It is also, the rivers would also be fed with water that would feed the rice fields that are in this area. And of course, you have these mountains, Mount Makiling, Mount Banahaw, that are surrounding it, that is very rich in biodiversity. Now, so drainage area, around 70 plus rivers and channels going down Mount Makiling. Here in Los Baños area, the more important one is the Dampalit, Malawin Dampalit area, which would have streams, including the largest one, which is Mulawin Creek. Mulawin Creek would be the creek that you will be seeing later on that will pass through the Makiling Botanical Garden. So when you walk a little bit further down, this pathway that you would see, you'd go to probably the early part of Mulawin Creek. Okay? So Mulawin Creek would be here. Other creeks would be the Cambaclo, Greater Sipit area. In Batangas side, you have the Tikpi area. This mountain produces a lot of precipitation, or it gets a lot of precipitation. Okay? So if you look at it from the highway, you'll also see there will always be a prominent cloud surrounding it. You probably get it water from the lake ecosystem. And this side of the mountain, the one facing UPLB, is always wet in nature. The other side, because of the rain shadow effect, and the other side is a little bit dry. Okay? So this side is a little bit dry, but this one gets a lot of moisture, around 1,853 millimeters millimeters per annum. Okay? Now, the name of the mountain itself is called Mount Makiling. Okay? Kiling means to straddle or to lean. Okay? It is also the name of a bamboo. The bamboo's name is Makiling because it is a leaning type of bamboo. But the mountain itself looks like a woman that is leaning or lying down. So that is the myth on how the mountain was formed. Okay? It's called the Diwata, or the goddess of the mountain. We also think of her as the protector of the mountain, and it looks like a reclining figure. Okay? So sometimes when we have visitors here, just like to say, ask permission from the mountain goddess that you will be here in our mountain ecosystem. Okay? So you won't get into any accidents. But that is part of the culture of this area. Now, even if it is a small mountain, it is actually an oasis of endemism. Okay? There are agricultural fields and urban areas in that area, but it also leads to an isolated area wherein a lot of species will be speciating, will be produced. Okay? Not really far from the metropolis, only 65 kilometers from it, but this mountain has been protected by the university for many decades already. Okay, so UPLB has prime jurisdiction of this mountain. We are now here in the Makiling Botanical Garden, wherein some of the areas here would be exhibiting some of the plants that are found within the mountain itself. I think the organizers decided that instead of going up the mountain, and we'll just be here in this area. Right? But the Makiling Center for Mountain Ecosystem is actually the agency that is directly responsible for managing the forest ecosystem. Okay? Now, it is also a designated hotspot of species. We have over 2,300 known species today, okay? Divided into around 150 species of avifauna, okay? Around 400 species of mammals. For amphibians, this is quite a low number. Okay? Probably we have to do more research on amphibians and reptiles. So around 26 amphibian species and 69 reptilian species are documented in this mountain itself. And for the flora, around 2,000 plus flora has been documented here. Okay? So included here would be Strombolidae macrobotris, which is the jade vine. We also have Rafflesia panchoana, okay, as well as Euphedelia magnifica. Okay. This small mountain, okay, is divided into 4 different altitudinal gradients. Okay? The lowland area where you are doing the circa, auditorium, and the likes, and part of UPLB is part of the parang vegetation, where there is open grassland, a little bit of agroforestry, and on the other side of the mountain, they said it is quite dry, inhabited by a lot of yung Imperata cylindrica. In Filipino, we call them cogon. Okay? But on this side of the mountain, okay, as you reach 100 to 500 meters elevation, we have a lowland evergreen forest, which has multi-strata canopy and would have a high diversity of dipterocarps, hardwood. Okay? When you visit the MBG area a little bit later, we have an area which is the dipterocarp plantation. So you would see the different types of hardwood species that we have. Okay? Beyond the mud spring area of the mountain itself, we will be going to the lower montane forest, which is a transitional zone. We would have a lot of bamboos, rattans, early epiphytes, okay? And the top portion of the mountain, despite it being small, there is a mossy area in that area. Okay? It is an upper montane mossy area because the trees are a little bit stunted already, and they would be filled with a lot of mosses. Okay? So stunted single strata canopy, persistent condensation, and heavy bryophyte cover. Okay? Horizontal, what do you call this? Horizontal variation, okay? Nakita na, we already saw it a little bit earlier, but vertical stratification can also be observed. We noticed that although there are very few studies of canopy, we are just in the start of our study of canopy studies, we noticed that the highly studied area, which is the understory, we have a lot of amphibians, a few birds, reptiles, and mammals can be seen here. But as we notice, when we study subcanopy and canopy, there would be a vertical stratification of the species that we have. Not listed here are insects and other non-charismatic species, and that would probably increase. So not only should we be climbing up and down the mountain, just looking at what is seen just by the naked eye at eye level, some of our studies are now gearing towards going up the vertical stratification of each of the vegetation types. Now, there are a lot of flora, as I mentioned earlier, okay? So, we have the Rafflesia panchuana. Unfortunately, their bloom has already ended. They usually bloom around as early as February up to, I think, around April. Okay? So this is a parasitic plant. It doesn't have any outward vegetation, leaves and the likes. But as soon as it is ready to bloom, you find them in the branches of Tetrastigma, which is a vine, and it will bloom. So this was a picture from a few years ago when I visited the area. The forest rangers have already identified the plots where the Rafflesia are found, okay? And you can actually go and visit them, okay? Once they are blooming, okay? So that is one. Also, we have the epiphyte Medinilla, okay? Magnifica, and all other species of Medinilla can be found in Mount Makiling. Here in the Makiling Botanical Garden, they have brought it down here for you to witness. In the Filipino, we call them kapa-kapa because their calyx here looks like capes. Okay? It's an ornamental epiphyte that is usually in the upper mossy flores. Okay? And of course, I mentioned some of the pterocarps, so the towering giants of our mountain ecosystem, like here, your Shorea or the white lawaan. Now, we also have a few herpetofauna, okay? And our recent studies on it would look at cryptic species. For a very long time, these two species have been put as one species, but further study, I think Dr. Jesmos will be talking a little bit later in the afternoon, and he's one of the proponents who allowed for the splitting of these species from the Platymantis luzonensis to the Platymantis mimulus. For non-herpetologists, they might look the same, right? One is just smaller than the other, but the herpetologists would have other taxonomic ways of defining them. We also have lizards and a lot of snakes here. Okay? So probably when you go around, don't be surprised if a frog would jump up or it's very early in the morning. So you would see some of these reptiles basking on the rock surfaces. They're trying to get their energy. Okay? And I hope nobody is afraid of snakes. They might just slither at the side of you. Okay? So the best thing to do is just to walk around them or away from them if you do manage to see them. So don't panic when you see them. We also have a lot of birds in this area. Okay? Some of our students here, where are my students? My BS better, I can hear. Okay? Some of our students here in the lower campus would always just say that the only birds that they would see would be the Maya bird, which is a very common bird here in the Philippines. But if you actually look close enough, be patient enough to look at our trees, there will be more than just the Maya in this area. Okay? Some of these birds would be the spotted kingfisher, which is always seen next to river ecosystems. Okay? So if you are into birding, okay, if you just look at them. we have trogons, we do have some raptors here, right? Of course, we do not have the Philippine eagle in this mountain. But a few years back, we did have the sanctuary of the raptors here in Mount Makiling. But has since relocated to Metro Manila, the birds in captivity. Okay? So there are no Philippine eagles in this mountain today. Okay? We do have serpent eagles and hawks that we see from time to time, but a lot of the more colorful birds like bleeding heart pigeons, kingfishers, fantails. We do have the equivalent of the hummingbirds, which is your sunflowers and flower peppers, as well as your bee eaters, are a lot in this area. Okay? Studies on what are the pollinators of, let's say, Melodilia. Instead of hummingbirds, very small birds, the bee eaters and the flower peppers, the ones that are seen here. We do have mammals, right? Some of the more mammals that we'd like to highlight here would be cloud rats, right? So cloud rats, they look like big house rats, okay? And for some of the locals, right, the non-scientific part of our community, they usually associate it with mythical creatures. There was a time when it was accidentally killed because a household thought it was a manananggal, which is a mythical creature that eats fetuses of inside pregnant women. Okay? Only to find out that it was actually a cloud rat that was interceding. Okay? We also have bats, a lot of bat species here. Okay? There are some monkeys in the mountain, wild boars, even civet cats. Okay? So these are some of the species that are up in the... Here in the lowlands, we do have a lot of rodents. Okay? Now, as I mentioned, species that I mentioned earlier are the more charismatic ones. Means you'd like to see them because they have flowers, they have beautiful plumages, they are big, they are cute in appearance. But we do have a large variety of those non-charismatic species like your other invertebrates, including your arthropods. Okay? So they are the ones that would keep the health of our forest ecosystem in decomposition, in pollination, in spreading of that other propagules. So I was lucky enough to have a former student name a cockroach with me. So even if it is a cockroach, like cockroach, right? They are stinky, they are strong, but they are very important species in the forest. Okay. Also, we have web spinners. We have a lot of stick insects, we have a lot of butterflies and moths in this area. Okay? And I mentioned earlier that half up the mountain, there is actually a vent of the volcano, okay, which is the mud spring area. Okay? And in this mud spring area, around a little less than 50 meters in diameter, the mud spring area, it's really boiling, relatively hot. But we were able to find extremophiles in this area, bacteria that are thriving in very hot environments. Okay? So, Caldivigra pachiliensis and Caldisfera lagunensis are some of these thermophilic bacteria that is found in this area. So our microbiology students would actually go there, collect some of the samples in that area, and do some research on it. So this is my photo from a few years back on what it looks like. Right now, there is actually a fence surrounding it because some of the visitors who try to tend to go near the mud spring area, it's quite dangerous. Okay? But when I took this, the fence has not yet been established. Okay? So other secrets that have to be unveiled by this mountain would include what can be found in the canopies. Okay? what are found in the water that are not just fish. Okay? So we have springtails and collembolas are now being studied. We're looking at more of the arthropod species as well as the bacteria and fungi that are microscopic in nature. So, our call for the university as well as these agencies surrounding it is how to preserve this laboratory for generations to come. It might seem that the mountain has been heavily studied, but even up to now, we still see a lot of things new to science, a lot of systems that are quite new. Okay? So we'll probably continue studying this mountain for many decades to come. Okay? Now, this mountain is an Asian heritage site. Yes, we have been studying it for very long, but there are a lot of species that are overlooked. Okay? Not really overlooked, but because they are non-charismatic, very few students would like to study them. Okay? So, this is just from the Kambaknok area. Okay? This is data for mosses. Okay? And you'll notice that only 27 species of mosses has been adopted in the Malawi-Tapalit area, which would account around 12% of known mosses of the mountain. Okay? Very small. Okay? And even with that, we do have some new records of mosses around the Philippines. So, it is something to look in. Okay? So, hence my presentation on mosses, herbarium collections, and the plant ecology of the Philippines. The Philippines and the mountain would actually have a large variety of mosses. Around 700 species of mosses found in the Philippines. A good part of it would have origins that of Taiwan and China and in surrounding Southeast Asia. So when we do have new collections, we look at what we already have collected. If it is not seen here, we go through the listings of our surrounding countries to check if they're also available there. So of the most Philippine species here, the largest one would be that of Cematophyllaceae, okay? Followed by the Leucobreaceae. They are large for a moss. Okay? So we'll have Hypnaceae, a little bit. Physidentaceae is a river moss, so you see them in river beds. Probably a little bit later, you'll be able to see that around. In trunks of trees, you probably see a lot of Cematophylls and Leucobreaceae. Okay? So they're not really that exciting to see because they're just mats, they don't have flowers. And sometimes they don't produce a lot of spore-bearing structures unless it is raining. Okay? Now, the mountain I mentioned, there is an elevational gradient, and it is also seen in the distribution of mosses in Mount Makiling. Here in the lowland area, we have a tropical lowland evergreen forest. We do have not a lot of moss species here because the limiting factor here is that of water, right, and temperature. Mosses would like to have a more wet environment and a cooler environment. But as you go up the mountain, you have a lower montane forest that transitions into the upper montane forest. You would have an increased number of mosses. Okay? So they look like carpets in tree trunks. Okay? So the mosses of Mount Makiling, okay, a lot of them are found in this area. I mentioned earlier, Hypnaceae, Necarens, Physidens can be seen in that area. Around 155 to 213 species as documented by Tan and Intwatsugi in 1991. Okay? From then, there are several expeditions and studies that have been conducted in the mountain, either reaffirming the presence of these mosses here or probably looking at are there new species in that area. So far, wala pa kaming new species, but probably new records of distribution in Mount Makiling. So, If you look at the pioneers of Moses in the Philippines, our Bible for studying it is Bartram, okay? Which he did his book around the 1930s. So it has been a long time coming in updating the Moses of the Philippines, okay? The next pioneer, so he is non-Filipino. He went here, he documented from collections of Merrill, of other scientists. Right? But the more recent one, okay, is Dr. Benito Tan. Some of you might have heard of him. He is a Filipino scientist, but he had been teaching at NUS. His last work was at the University of California in Berkeley, right? But he has been going from Singapore to Japan to the Philippines to the United States for long, and he has been mentoring a lot of students, right? Unfortunately, he already passed in 2016, but he left behind a legacy of most collections that I have yet to open up in the Museum of Natural History. He left around 4 to 5 boxes of unclassified mosses that we still have to sift through to check if there are something new to document. Okay? So because of his studies, okay, he was able to put a niche of biology in science for the Philippines. More recently, and along with Dr. Benny Tan, okay, a forester of the California Academy of Science has come to the Philippines to check on and update Philippine biology. Okay? James Shevok, okay, was once part of the California, is part of the California Academy of Science, and back in the early 2010s came here to document at least 4 mountains in Luzon area. Mount Makiling was one, Mount Isarog, then we did Mount Malaraya. Okay? So these are some of the mountains that we went to here, and we documented more than 600 species where we were able to collect them. Okay? And still documenting. From that study, he then focused his attention to an area that is less studied. And he had this hypothesis that Luzon is highly studied. Probably not get a lot of new species here because a lot of people are actually studying it. Let us go to a frontier that has more potential. So James Shevok, along with Dr. Amoroso, okay, went into hypothesized area that has a Gondwana origin and probably a different variety of mosses. Of course, there would be overlaps, but he hypothesized that there would be more things new to see in that group. Okay? So the historical bias is that Luzon, because it is near the metropolis, is highly documented. 613 species has been seen in that area. Floristic affinity of that area is most probably Laurasian because it is China, Taiwan, that of South Asia. Okay? So it is historically well documented, but the new frontier with this Mindanao, historically only documented 333 species. Only half of what is found in Luzon. The hypothesis, it is more of Gondwanan origin. Okay? There is a severe undersampled area because of lack of exploration. Fortunately for us, the team of Dr. Amoroso created the Center of Biodiversity for Mindanao, right, sir? Sebre is now the leading group in looking at Mindanao species and putting Mindanao in the map as a center of biodiversity. And probably the works of Dr. Amoroso and his team, Dr. Fulgent, would actually probably surpass the number of species that we found here in Luzon because they have a lot of mountains, okay, that are relatively unexplored. And that is quite exciting. So just in the last few years' time, there is more than 100 new records of mosses in that area. Okay, so around 400 plus na, creeping into the 300, 600 plus of Luzon area. Okay. So, if you look at mountains of Mindanao, similar to that of Mount Makiling, you have lowland forests here, you have midland slopes, and you would have summit clouds and pygmy forests on top. Okay? So they have something similar, but also something different and exciting in Mindanao. Okay? So a few years back, prior to the pandemic, I tagged along with Dr. Amorosa and his team. Okay? So I tagged along with them, and this is the Mosi Forest of one of the mountains in Mindanao. Okay? This is in Mount Limbawan. Can you see this is Fulgent there? Okay? This is Sir Amorosa doing his photos. He's like taking photos of the things. So this is Dr. Amorosa here. And this is the forest. Right? So they were doing their biodiversity survey, and I was just walking around looking what is available, seeing what is different and unique in that mountain. If you notice this area, this is a pygmy forest, stunted forest area. Okay? Look at the trees. The trees are only up to our chest in height. And actually, there is a peatland in that area. So because of that unique combination of ultramafic, pygmy or stunted forest, mostly acidic peatland area, a lot of new species are found in that area. And we commend that for that because that mountain is very hard to climb. Okay? It took us several hours, okay, just to get to base camp, and probably the next day, we had to do several hours of walking again to the mountain top itself. But the view is breathtaking. The organisms, I can only say I have only seen it there. And of course, we do not encourage everybody to go there. We do not want to exceed the carrying capacity of the mountain. Okay? But we do want to bring back pictures, show you what we have found. And if this is just found in one mountain, what more for the other mountains of Mindanao? That is quite exciting. Right? Currently, studies on mosses are not only limited to biodiversity surveys, not only of what is there, what species are there, but we are also looking at the relationship of these species to that of the surrounding ecosystem. So a lot of the studies right now, because mosses would like to have wet and dry and cold environments, are more targeted towards riverine vegetation, or riverine ecosystems. So we call them your rheophyte niche. Okay? So river areas. Okay? So in wet season, these mosses would actually, I call them blooming, but they're actually not actually blooming, rehydrating. So the area looks like a map of green vegetation. But during the summertime, or times when there is drought that is happening, even if it is supposedly the wet season, if there is drought, the mosses disappear, and they become these crusty looking entities on rock surfaces in the next. So we would actually have seasonal studies on rheophytic mosses. Okay? So right now, I'm conducting a study of rheophytes here in Mulawin Creek, mostly on the lower campus in the Horgarden area, and that, no, but hopefully we'll be able to go up Mount Makiling and look at the other rheophytes in this area. Okay? Another portion of what we do in this university is look at mosses in other ecosystems like that of cave ecosystems. Okay? So we look at the cave ecosystems as one of the niches that we need to protect. What is inside the cave? How are the organisms inside the cave related to that of outside the cave? But of course, not all the bats will be eating a lot of figs, a lot of fruit-bearing trees. But what about the outside or the entrances of the cave, which would actually keep the humidity inside, the moisture inside? So we look at the plants and the vegetation at the openings of cave entrances, and we noticed that a lot of ferns and mosses are in this area. So we do a lot of this when we go into cave researches. Right? So you'll notice that if we have the nicer cave project, centers of cave, why would there be a project or a program that is on plants and there are no plants inside cave? But we noted that the vegetation and the health of the environment outside of the cave would actually be a determinant of the health of the cave ecosystem inside. So part of it would be checking out what of the mosses outside of the caves. So we did it for Pulilio Island. So Puting Bato is in Pulilio Island. We do it for, let's say, our later Caribbean projects, Cavite, and all the surrounding cave ecosystems are included in the Nicer Cave project. And in all these studies, sometimes we discover something new that is quite exciting, but sometimes we find something that has been lost. Okay? So this one is a study by Jim Shevok and his assistant Pula na pangalan ni Yorong, I forgot his name. Si Ayman, okay? And then there actually rediscovered a species in Mindanao that has been lost for many years already. It hasn't been documented for some time, but they were able to find it again, which means that instead of losing biodiversity, we are keeping it or increasing its number. Right? So there are a lot of things to see. And I hope in this activity, this is all something new to you also. You'll also be discovering something in Mount Makiling. Right? So, mosses are not just these small creeping samples. If it is in the right area, ample water, ample temperature, they can be a little bit bigger. This is Hypnodendron. They look like tiny palm trees, usually found on rocks in riverbeds. So during summertime, you don't see them. Okay, because they are dormant at that time. Okay? Unfortunately, their distribution does not cover up to the Makiling Botanical Garden, but beyond the mud spring areas, you'll be able to find them in these river ecosystem. So this is something new for us to see. Okay? So I think I'll end my discussion here, and I hope you'll be able to discover more of the Mount Makiling Biota, okay, as you go around our little facility here in the Makiling Botanical Garden. Good morning to you all, and have a good day.